It's April 6th, 2020. I'm Andy. I woke up here. And today I'm going to show you one of my coding projects. Let's get stuck in. Okay, so what do I mean by new tab page? This is what I mean right here. So normally this page is provided by your browser when you open up a new tab, and you get kind of a search bar, and I think some of these can be fixed by you some way, and it's trying to guess what I'm visiting often, but it's really not doing a very good job of it. So I thought I could do better for myself. So if I switch over to Firefox, there's an add-on called New Tab Override. This is the settings where you can set your own page. And if I click right here, so if I open a new tab, then that's what I'm getting. And this is the project that we'll be looking at today. It has two little modes. You can see in the URL bar this little hashtag thing. Self means it should open up on the same page. And I'm also using this as my home page. Then in this case we don't get this little hashtag self thing. So if I click on something, it's gonna open up a new tab for me. Okay, so if you look at the page a little bit closer, up there at the top there's a settings panel that we can open up, and then we get to the theme manager. So you can kind of create your own themes and save them right here. I'm gonna show you a couple of them that I've made. This is a bright theme with a solid background, for example. You can also set a color gradient as a background. And there are some that have a JPEG background that you can select right here. Let's go a little bit deeper into the settings that we can change here. Let's get a solid color going. Let's see. You can see it updates live as I change the color on the picker. Let's get a nice turquoise, like this maybe. Looks good. Okay, let's change the scroll bar track to a brighter color, like this. Okay, this is nice. Maybe we can do gradient. Looks even better. Okay, make it a bit brighter, maybe. Okay, so we're kind of staying with this oceanic theme, but we have a solid color instead. Okay, so if I'm done, I want to make a new theme here, so I'm gonna click Save Theme As, and name it Oceanic 2. As I hit hit enter. That's the new theme we have created right now. I also have a couple extra buttons, so if I wanna change something on this current theme, Oceanic 2, maybe have the separator be a bit dimmer, like this. Okay, save theme. Yes, I want to override this theme. Okay, and it happens for me. I could also delete this theme. Not gonna do that right now. I also have an export settings button here. When I click this, it's gonna export a JSON with all of my settings, all of my current settings, and all of my themes. So if something were to happen to the local storage on this browser, I could reload all of my themes from this file again. And the last button is commit settings to storage. I felt like for me personally it was a better idea to do saving in a two-step way, so I could basically delete a whole bunch of themes, change other ones, add new ones. All of this only gets saved to the permanent local storage when I commit them. Obviously, if this project was created for a client, I would simply do single step save. So saving a theme would save it to local storage right away. Alright, so how was all of this created? One of the main objectives for this project was to create something that's able to load super quickly. So because I'm opening tabs like hundreds of times a day, it really matters. That's why I went with Vanilla.js, and also everything's bundled with Webpack. So the HTML and the CSS are both minified for the production version of this, and the JS files are all three are bundled. There are three of them because I'm doing code splitting. Let me show you what I mean. So if I open the network tab and let's do a reload, we have a small app bundle which handles loading the themes and opening links. But if I click on this toggle button and toggle the settings panel, we actually get two additional JavaScript files. One of them is the npm packages that are in vendors chunk, and the settings chunk handles the settings panel itself. Before we jump into the code, I want to show you if I run npm start on my little console here, I have a Webpack dev server installed, which means if I change anything on the code, it will reload this page. So it works the same way that you're used to if you ever used Create React app before. I think it would make the most sense to start with looking at the package.json file. Dev dependencies, this is all Webpack stuff I'm using. I'm gonna go into a bit more detail on my Webpack configuration. It might be interesting for you. Also, these are the two dependencies that I'm using, the two npm packages. Vanilla picker is the color picker that opens when I click on the swatches, and the other one is called UUID. So if I load a different theme, you'll actually see every theme has a generated unique identifier, which is made with UUID version 4. And in terms of scripts, so we have start here. So npm start will start the Webpack dev server with this configuration file, and we have a separate config file when I decide to make a production version of the project. So let's have a look at these individual Webpack config files. As I said, we have a dev configuration and a production configuration. Both of them are using merge and are merged with Webpack common. So the basic settings are in webpack.common.js. Let's see what it does. Our entry point in the source files is index.js. HTML Webpack plugin takes this index.template.html and it will actually write in the correctly named JS files every time I'm changing something. Copy plugin is used to copy the wallpaper JPEGs. There's also a little PHP file that I'm using to make the export button work right here. This obviously won't work in the development environment, but I have PHP on my web server, so there it will run without any problems. Mini CSS extract plugin does things with the CSS. These two rules mean that, okay, should I explain this? I have my CSS file imported into base.js, I think. No, it's index.js instead. So since this is imported here, Webpack is able to make handle my CSS rules, and CSS loader is the thing that is able to parse my CSS, and the mini CSS extract plugin extracts this into a new file and is able to minify. Okay, hashtag chest length is important when you do content hash like this here, see, we have 3 places where I'm using these content hashes. Contact hash, content hash makes a hashes this the content of this file, so if ever anything changes, it will generate a new hash number, but these are normally, I think, 24 characters long. By setting hash digest length here to 8, I'm able to constrict that hash to the first 8 characters, so it looks a bit nicer. Okay, Webpack.js is setting mode development, so the JS files don't get minified in this instance for this configuration, but you can see we have our entry file and we have our separate chunk for the settings part of the application. That's this is how you do code splitting with Webpack, or at least one of the ways. I think there are 4 different ones you can do. This particular one, this chunk file one, is based on the dynamic import statement that came in with, I think, ES 2019. Let's show you how that looks like in the code. If I search for import right here, there we go. So we have our dynamic import statement, which gives us a promise, and by setting this particular comment here, this is where Webpack gets the name of this chunk from. So you could have multiple chunk files this way, multiple import statements, each one with a different Webpack chunk name, and that's how you do code splitting. There's a little promise here, and once everything's okay, I'm able to start using the functions from our chunk here. Okay, the last file is Webpack prod. This sets mode to production. Both our JS file and our JS files and our CSS will get minimized in this configuration, and we get these nice hashes in the file names for the JS files as well. So this is all there is to the Webpack settings. Since I went into such detail with the Webpack configuration, I think it might also be useful to show you how what this folder looks like once after I've run npm build. So this folder will look like this. So we have our entry app.js file here with the short and content hash right there. You see these are different, so this is the content hash for the CSS file, meaning that if I do a new production version, but I only change something in the base.js file, then the CSS file can stay with the previous hash, so it doesn't need to be reloaded from the browser. Okay, copy the copy plugin from Webpack will copy the wallpapers folder with all its images every time, and this little export JSON PHP file into our distribution folder. Index.js gets minified. Oops. If I do F4, so we get the minified version of the content of our index template, and this is where the app bundle gets loaded in. You can see the content hash is the same that it is right here. So you can do a production version without really having to modify anything in this folder after. And lastly, this is our trunk file again, and endorse is the two npm packages that we're loading. These are also content hashed, so this hash probably hasn't changed in weeks now, because I'm since I'm not adding any more npm packages to this project. Okay. Our app bundle JS is made up of 4 little JS source files. The first one, our entry file, is index.js, which imports our base.js file and initializes it once our browser has loaded properly. Base.js is responsible for the functionality that is visible on the page from the get-go. So it's responsible for opening links with our little self or not self thing that I showed you before. It also is test with loading our current theme and loading the settings from the local storage string right here. In terms of code, this is our opener function, and this is the initialization that I mentioned before. If the browser doesn't have a local storage string present at the moment, then the script will load with the contents of the default settings JS file instead. Because of this, I could actually show you what our big settings state object looks like when it's running. So current theme is what will be loaded when the page loads, and themes is an object which contains the other themes that you can load. So if we don't have a local storage string present, then these are the two themes that will be loaded, will be available by default. And this little wallpapers.js file contains our image files, image backgrounds, and the names for them that are shown right here. Okay, continuing with base.js, commit to storage handles the saving of our settings object into local storage, and change wallpaper right here is responsible for loading the interpreting the current background settings. So all of these four get interpreted together, and in the end there's a single background style string that we are splitting out based on the settings that have been set on these top four controls. Show current theme is as you can see, it goes change wallpaper that we've discussed just now, and it runs through all of the color settings for the other controls, and we'll update the CSS variables and the toggle settings panel, shortly discussed before. This gets run when I click on this settings toggler button, and it's gonna import our settings chunk file. Okay, so that's all there is to it. Since I have my CSS file open already, I might as well discuss it a little bit. In general, I wanted to say, if you dig into this project, you will see that I'm just doing a quick and dirty grid-based layout here. The project was only tested with Firefox and Chrome. Firefox because that's the browser I'm actually using this little new tab page in, and I am betting on you as a developer. You're probably using Chrome, so if this project was were to be built for a client, the CSS would look very different and would use a fallback for the grid layout and so on and so forth. So progressive enhancement. I'm actually I'm planning another project video in the near future, which will be React based, and on that one I will create a layout as well. That is how I think a production version of a CSS should look like. Okay, let's turn to our main event, which is the settings chunk file, which is made up of settings.js here and these four other little files. Let's start with settings.js. Catch enter is used to catch the enter if I save a new theme, so I could type a name here and hit enter, and the saving would happen then. Theme has been modified and uncommitted changes do a little update in our settings state object right here. So this is the state of our application, and the modified will be set to true when we have, sorry about that, when we call theme has been modified. And also some of our buttons, the save as button, will get highlighted, and the commit settings button will also get highlighted. So this runs every time I change anything. See, like this. And then export settings creates a post and calls the export.json PHP file that we have. Post.js is I just got this from Stack Overflow, so this is, I think, completely unmodified from the code that I found there. It takes params and sends it as a post to a URL, and the URL that gets called is export.json. So this is our little backend code that takes in the string that got posted to it, and will return as a JSON file with this content disposition attachment. You can force the browser to handle this page as a downloadable file, and you can even suggest a default file name, which will be gstart settings and the current date and time. So that's what this export.json PHP does. Continuing on window resize and update starter colors, these do little modifications to our color pickers. So if we have a look at, if I click on this swatch, the picker will open on the right side, but with this one it will open on the left side. But as I resize the page, these controls all will be reflowing, so you have to reposition your color pickers like this. So on window resize will run every time the resize event happens and repositions the color pickers. And the other one, update picker starter colors. By starter color I mean when I click on a swatch, this is the starter color, so the picker should open with the current color already selected, and you have to do this every time you load a new theme. Okay, and then render settings. This method only runs a single time. When I open up this settings panel for the first time. Render settings will put together the HTML for this panel. So you get a bunch of diffs here. Everything gets pushed into this array, and then when the HTML is done, I'm just joining the contents of this array, which will contain all the HTML needed for this panel. Something I should definitely highlight here are the way I put together the various controls, the HTML for them. So by control I mean the drop down, the checkbox, and all the color controls right here. They are created by a control factory, which is something I picked up fairly recently, how to do a factory. So this module implements the factory method pattern and the behavior delegation pattern. The factory method pattern is a relatively simple pattern which says that you ought to have a function that is putting together new objects for you, assembling them, and behavior delegation is happening here with these two lines. So object.create, the first parameter you set in here will be the prototype for this object. So generic control right here will be the prototype of our assembled object, and then depending on what type of control I'm making, the object will get extended with the appropriate render function. So a color type of control will have a different render function than select type control. And the very last method in this settings.js file is render theme selector, which renders our little theme selector right here. This will be run a whole bunch of times before, because you know, if you save a new theme, then you have to change the add that as a new option and select it, and delete theme will remove objects from here and reselect our default theme. This is kind of one of the headaches that you have to put up with when you do vanilla.js instead of using a library like React. You can't just hook up parts of your and the state of your application to automatically re-render things on the UI. Every time you want to do something like that, you have to hard code it, like I do right here, and a bunch of other places in the theme manager namespace. Continuing on with our theme manager namespace, this object is responsible for loading and saving and deleting our themes, and it's a pretty generic CRUD implementation. A couple of things to point out. If we look at our activate theme, there's an object assign happening here, which is let's say we picked this theme right here by the name of test. There it is. So when we load this theme, all the parameters will be assigned to current theme right here. That's how it operates. So the objects in the theme container object only change once you hit save or delete or save as. In general, as you edit your current theme, the only thing that changes is theme settings in current theme right here. Right. Another thing I wanted to show you here is save theme as, which is used, of course, to create new themes. You might have noticed that all my themes have these nice long identifiers, like this one here. This is generated with UUID, so universally unique identifier, the version 4 variant of it. And that's where this is happening. So UUID is one of the npm packages I'm importing right here, and with this, if I were to generate 10 trillion themes, the chance of getting a duplicate theme ID between them somewhere would be something like 0.000000006, so 7 zeros I think, and the 6 at the end. So that's UUID v4. Seems to me a pretty nice idea. Also, as I mentioned, render theme selector, which renders our selector here, will get called here in save theme as, and delete theme too, because the list of options and the currently selected option will have to change as you do these modifications. And the very last module we'll be looking at is our color manager. This is where we import our vanilla picker package from npm, which is doing these little windows here. Now HTML has a input type color built in to it, but that one opens the color picker that's built into your operating system, and that one doesn't have an alpha channel, so it can't do transparency like this right here. So vanilla picker not only looks better but also works in a more full-featured way. This is the package page for it, but I've actually found a different site where you have a more detailed instruction in how to use this picker. Basically what you have to do is import the package, and then you create a new picker instance like this with and the most important part of the configuration that has to be put in here is the parent div where you are going to attach your picker. So for me it's attached to these swatches right here. The picker has a whole bunch of callback functions. I have onChanged hooked up right away to changing the CSS variables, so that's how I was able to do this preview right here. Another thing that's interesting with this, you can have you have a setting where you could have a cancel button on this little UI, but I instead went with cancelling by clicking somewhere else on the page, and then there's the small timeout and the color will reset to the previous value that was in here. Another thing that I should be pointing out here is, let's see if I can find it, restore color is there are this is the function that gets called in our timeout when we cancel one of our colors like this. Commit color will be the function that runs when I hit OK instead, like this. And update picker starter colors, I mentioned this method before. It's a good idea to keep these picker objects in the memory. So if you want to set the starter color later on, you can call set color on that object, and it's going to happen for you. So this is an API method you can call on the instance after it's been initialized. Okay, so I think this is all the code in our little project. So this turned out to be a long one. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. I really hope you got something out of it. The repo for this project is available on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. The project is released under the MIT license, so you're very welcome to fork it or do whatever else you need to do with it. if you noticed any major mistakes or have any other thoughts, leave them in the comments. But please try to be kind. We're all just fallible, fragile human beings. Alright, see you next time and have a great day. Section 110, take 7. One of the main objectives for this project was to make something. Come baby, baby, come. You gotta give me loving and you gotta give me some. Ha! Come baby, baby, come. You gotta give me loving and you gotta give me some. Ha! Come on.